Daniel always slept with his bedroom door locked. It was a habit born from a general sense of caution, not a specific fear, but one not. That simple habit would be the only thing standing between him and something truly terrifying. Something that tried to open it. Daniel, a 24-year-old, lived alone in a small one-bedroom apartment. It was in a quiet, almost boring suburb, the kind of place where nothing ever happened. He was a classic night owl. His evenings usually spent lost in the world of online gaming until the early hours of the morning. When he finally decided to sleep, it was typically around 2 or 3 a.m., with a YouTube video playing softly on his phone, a familiar voice to lull him into a peaceful state. One particular night, he found himself waking up abruptly. He glanced at his phone. The clock read 3:18 a.m. There was no noise, no nightmare that had jolted him from his sleep. He just woke up. Instantly, a feeling of unease washed over him. Something was wrong. The apartment was completely silent. It wasn't the usual, peaceful quiet he was used to. It was an unnatural, heavy silence, as if the very air in the room was holding its breath, waiting. He rolled over, pulling the covers tighter, trying to dismiss the feeling and drift back to sleep. That's when he heard it. Soft footsteps, so quiet he almost missed them. They were slow, deliberate, and careful, coming from the short hallway just outside his bedroom. Daniel froze, his mind racing. He knew for a fact he'd locked his front door when he came in. All the windows were shut and locked, too. No one else had a key to his apartment. So who, or what, was in his home? The footsteps stopped. They were right in front of his bedroom door. A cold dread seeped into Daniel's bones. He held his breath, straining his ears, listening for any other sound. Then he saw it. The doorknob began to move. It wasn't a forceful turn, just a slight, gentle rattle, as if someone was quietly testing it, hoping it was unlocked. Daniel's heart began to hammer against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat so loud he was terrified the person on the other side would hear it. He slowly sat up in bed, his eyes wide and fixed on the doorknob. His hand fumbled for his phone on the nightstand. With trembling fingers, he silently dialed 911. He brought the phone to his ear and whispered his situation to the dispatcher, his voice barely audible. The operator, calm and professional, told him to stay on the line and find a place to hide. Just as he was about to slide off the bed and crawl into his closet, the doorknob moved again. This time, it turned more forcefully, straining against the lock. Someone was trying to get in, their patience clearly wearing thin. Panic surged through Daniel. He scanned the room for a weapon, his eyes landing on the small, heavy metal lamp on his nightstand. He grabbed it, its cold weight offering little comfort, but it was better than nothing. Suddenly bang! A loud, violent knock slammed against the door, making him jump. Then another and another. It was no longer a quiet attempt. It was an aggressive, impatient assault on his door. The wood shuddered with each impact. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the banging stopped. In the ringing silence that followed, Daniel heard the distinct sound of fast footsteps running down the hallway. Seconds later, the front door of his apartment slammed shut with a deafening crash. He remained frozen, lamp held high, until he heard the sirens wailing in the distance. When the police finally arrived, they found the lock on his front door had been broken and forced open. But the most chilling discovery was inside. On his carpet, they found a trail of muddy footprints. They led from the front door, down the hallway, and stopped directly in front of his bedroom door. They searched the area, but no suspect was ever found. The police theorized that the intruder had been watching Daniel, learning his routine for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Since that night, Daniel never sleeps without something heavy, like his dresser, pushed up against his bedroom door, and even now, he still wonders what would have happened if he hadn't locked it. Allison thought the tapping on her window was just a tree branch swaying in the wind, a common sound in a quiet, suburban home. She was wrong, dead wrong. At 31, Allison lived in a cozy, single-story house she'd bought a year prior. It was her sanctuary, a place of peace in a calm, family-friendly neighborhood. Her bedroom window looked out into her backyard, which was completely enclosed by a high wooden fence. No one, she thought, should be able to get back there without making a serious racket. One night, at around 2:50 a.m., she was pulled from a deep sleep by a faint sound. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from her bedroom window. The wind, she mumbled to herself, rolling over. It was probably just a branch from the old oak tree brushing against the glass. Maybe it was starting to rain. She tried to ignore it, to sink back into the warmth of her bed. But the tapping didn't stop. In fact, it became more distinct. It had a rhythm now. Tap, tap, tap. A steady, intentional beat. It wasn't the random pattern of a branch. This was different. A knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach. She sat up, her eyes fixed on the closed blinds covering the window. She noticed they were moving slightly, swaying back and forth, as if something was brushing against them from the other side. Then she heard it, a whisper. It was low and breathy, a horrifying sound that seemed to slice through the silence of the room. "Are you awake?" Allison's entire body went rigid. Every muscle tensed, and her breath caught in her throat. She slowly, silently, reached for her phone on the nightstand, her hand shaking so badly she could barely grasp it. The whisper came again, closer this time, clearer, as if the person was now pressing their face against the glass. "I can see you." Suddenly, a bright light flooded the backyard. Her motion-activated porch light had turned on. The whispering stopped instantly. Allison's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her ears. Trembling, she crept to the side of the window and, with a shaking hand, lifted one single slat of the blinds, just enough to peek outside. She was expecting to see a raccoon, maybe a stray cat, or, hopefully, nothing at all. Instead, her blood ran cold. A man was standing there. He was just inches from her window, his face pressed grotesquely against the glass, a wide, unnatural smile stretched across his features. His eyes were locked on where she had been sleeping, as she watched in pure horror. His hand slowly raised, and he knocked on the window again, 3 deliberate times. Tap, tap, tap. Allison dropped the blind, as if it had burned her. A choked sob escaped her lips as she scrambled away from the window, running to her closet and locking herself inside. She frantically called 911, her voice a panicked, broken whisper. The police arrived within minutes, but the man was gone. All they found were muddy footprints circling her entire house, leading to a ladder that had been placed directly under her bedroom window. A ladder that wasn't hers. Her neighbors later reported seeing a creepy man wandering the area late at night for several days leading up to the incident. He was never caught. Allison moved out a month later. She couldn't stand the sight of that window. The memory of that smiling face burned into her mind. She still refuses to sleep in a room next to any window, ever again. Kevin thought he was alone when he got home at 4 in the morning. His roommate was out of town for the weekend, and the house should have been empty and silent. He wasn't alone. Kevin thought he was alone when he got home at 4 in the morning. His roommate was out of town for the weekend, and the house should have been empty and silent. He wasn't alone. Working late night shifts was a normal part of Kevin's life. As a 28-year-old, he was used to coming home when the rest of the world was fast asleep. This particular night was no different. He pulled into his driveway around 4:05 a.m., the street lights casting long, eerie shadows. He entered the house as quietly as he could, dropping his keys on the kitchen counter with a soft clink before heading to the bathroom to wash up. When he stepped out of the bathroom a few minutes later, he heard a sound, a soft clinking, coming from the kitchen. His first thought was that he must have left a window open. The wind was probably just moving something round on the counter. He wasn't particularly alarmed. But as he walked quietly toward the kitchen, another sound reached his ears, and this one made the hair on his arms stand up. Breathing. It was slow and heavy, and it definitely was not his. Kevin froze in the hallway, every sense on high alert. He peeked cautiously round the corner, into the dimly lit kitchen. Someone was standing there. A tall figure, with its back turned to him, was hunched over the kitchen counter. The person was unnervingly still, except for the slight rise and fall of their broad shoulders as they took those slow, heavy breaths. Just then, the faulty overhead light in the kitchen flickered on for a split second, illuminating the scene. In that brief flash, Kevin saw pale, long-fingered hands resting flat on the countertop. Kevin's mind immediately screamed burglar. He slowly, carefully, began to step backward, his hand reaching into his pocket for his phone. He needed to call the police, and he needed to do it without being seen. But before he could even unlock his screen, the figure turned its head. Not its body, just its head. It rotated at a sickening, unnatural angle, its neck seeming to twist independently from its torso, like an owl. Kevin saw only half of the face in the gloom, but it was enough. Sunken, dark eyes stared directly into him, devoid of any emotion. The figure then whispered something. It was a low, raspy mumble, the words unintelligible but filled with a chilling malevolence. That was all it took. Primal fear took over. Kevin didn't hesitate. He spun round and ran. He sprinted out the front door, not stopping until he was safely locked inside his car, where he finally called the police with shaking hands. When officers arrived and searched the house, they found it empty. But they did find evidence. There were muddy footprints leading from the back door, which had been pried open, into the kitchen. The trail stopped where the figure had been standing, then led back out the same way. But the scariest part, the detail that still haunts Kevin to this day, was what they found on the kitchen counter. There were fresh gouts in the wooden surface, deep marks, as if someone had been gripping it so hard that their fingernails had dug deep into the wood. The intruder was never found. Kevin doesn't come home late anymore. He found a new job, one that lets him be home before the sun goes down, not after seeing something in his kitchen that should not have been human. The dead of night is when everything hidden comes out, when your home feels too quiet, when shadows feel too alive. These 3 stories are reminders that sometimes the real horror happens while the rest of the world is asleep. They remind us that a locked door, a window latch, or just a gut feeling can be the only thing separating us from the terrifying unknown that lurks in the darkness. Thank you for listening. Sleep well.